So for me, entrepreneurial thinking is thinking about problems in a new way.
Entrepreneurial thinking is about making massive change to the status quo.
Willing to think not just outside of the box, but question why we need a box in the first place.
Entrepreneurial thinking is having the tools available to think like an entrepreneur in any situation.
Rather than just looking at the problem and saying, well, let's just meet this particular need, they're looking for upstream solutions where it might be that you can eliminate the need altogether, or you could redefine the problems.
And let's move forward and keep generating new alternatives and new ideas and pivot in different directions.
Maybe bring in solutions from outside their domain, being more creative, being more willing to play with ideas.
To create that culture, I think you have to create the reward system, but also the comfort to experiment.
I think when you think about what epitomizes the most successful business people is that they have creative ideas and then they work at putting them into practice. And a lot of those business people fail over and over again. All of your most successful people do.
If we really do want our research that comes out of the academic setting to have an impact in the community, then we need to teach students how to not just develop the evidence, but figure out innovative ways to share that evidence. The way to get that information out is to think entrepreneurially and really think about, look, how can we scale up these programs? How can we maybe turn this program into a business where we can support agencies to deliver these kind of services that we've shown to be effective in research?
Also, we don't need to commercialize everything, but we need to be able to understand how to teach our students those entrepreneurial thinking skills that can be valuable in any discipline or any career.
You don't want to ask somebody anymore, what do you want to do when you grow up? You want to ask them what problem they're going to solve.
Entrepreneurial thinking and the disruptive change and social innovation that comes from that is really an important thing to think about right now, because so much of our world is broken.
Every discipline, every job that we have in the world is facing serious problems.
It's unsustainable, it's not resilient, it's unhealthy, it's inequitable.
We need to have people at all walks of life graduating with these skills in order to be as efficient and agile in solving these problems.
I think it's about figuring out how you can contribute to the world. So what are your skill sets and how can you make the world around you a better place?
That all requires a new form of thinking, a more critical, creative approach.
So what we really need are people who can take their curiosity, spark discovery, think entrepreneurially, and they are going to not just create the jobs of the future, they're going to solve the problems of the future, those problems we don't even know exist yet.
Good morning. I am Sherman Robinson, counselor with the Project M.O.S.T program. I certainly hope and pray all is well with everyone this morning. We have an exciting and rewarding program planned for today. But before we get started, let's take a moment of silence to express our gratitude. Thank you. Next, we'll have our welcome by Dr. Cynthia Graham, Vice President of External Relations here at Southwest Tennessee Community College.
Good morning. Wow, what a great program you have in store today. I have to tell you, as I go out in the community, and part of what my office does is external relations, I always say we are the outward facing part of Southwest. So we go out and we tell the Southwest story when we're trying to raise dollars, either from individuals, corporations, grants. We tell the Southwest story. And I have to tell you that one of my favorite stories to share is about this program. Recently, we received a grant for M.O.S.T from our friends at Tennessee SCORE. It's a statewide nonprofit for education. And typically they only give to K through 12. But we pitched M.O.S.T to them because of the great work that you're doing every day as a cohort that leads to higher graduation rates, higher grades, leading to a better future. And we presented it as, this is something that works at Southwest that could be duplicated across the state of Tennessee. Because it works. And their only issue with it, if they were going to duplicate it, when they asked me what M.O.S.T stood for, and they said, well, we might have to come up with a different acronym since it stands for Men of Southwest Tennessee. That might not work in Nashville. And I said, well, if you kept the name, we would all think it was funny and we would be the only ones that would know what M.O.S.T stood for. But I have to tell you that this program is an amazing program. And for the gentlemen that are involved in this program, you are following a history, not a long history, but a great history of the men, the students that came before you, that went through this program, that has helped shape it into what it is today. You're being led by Kareem, who is, I don't think anyone could love a program more than he does. When we recently have had a little dust up with the Department of Education, you have such an advocate in Kareem. He will tell your story everywhere he goes, tell how it has made a difference in the lives of so many men. But what I want to tell you is it's not only making a difference in your life, and you know this, it's making a difference in your family's life. It's making a difference in Memphis, Tennessee, in Shelby County, in Southwest. This program is something that you can continue to be proud of many, many years down the road. I hope you will always stay in touch with the gentleman that you are in your cohort with. I hope you'll always stay in touch with the professors and teachers that are working with you, because these folks love you. And I have to tell you, Southwest Tennessee Community College loves you too. We're so proud of what you do every day. Thank you for being a part of M.O.S.T. And please know that my office is open to help anytime. Just to give a little plug here, my office is where book scholarships comes from. It's for emergency grants. If you need an emergency grant comes from, and it's also where the athletics department is ran out of. So I know we have some hopefully athletes on the call, because I believe some of our men's basketball team is part of this group. So thank you each day for what you're doing. Thank you, Kareem, and all the professors and teachers that walk hand in hand with these gentlemen. We are proud of you all.
Thank you so much, Dr. Graham. He's being rather modest. He's done quite a bit to help us out, especially recently. As she mentioned, her office is the office where most of these grants evolve from. And I've been working grant funded programs now for almost 29 years. So we certainly appreciate you, and appreciate you taking the time to come and invite everyone on this call to take part in this celebration, because it is a celebration. When you think about how difficult these last couple of years have been, just imagine the student having to deal with all these different issues and still be expected to perform and perform well. Well, these guys that we're celebrating this morning, they stood the test. Difficult times, they still didn't give up. So we're very thankful for them. This awards program was organized to recognize the accomplishments in the community service and academic achievements of the men participating in Project M.O.S.T. Now, we know all too well all of the negative statistics surrounding the success rates of African-American males in higher education, especially. But whatever the cause is for these undesirable outcomes, we really feel confident that with the right support, the right guidance, the knowledge and leadership, all of these situations can be changed. They can be reversed. Project M.O.S.T is structured using what we call a strengths-based approach that focuses on restoring those intrinsic motivations that are so essential for every human being and their ability to succeed. I identified about 5 of them. There's so many, I'm just going to limit it to 5 this morning. Self-esteem. These are intrinsic motivations, right? The ability to value yourself and to have high regard for yourself. Next is dignity, honor, privilege, the feeling of worthiness, trust, cooperation, curiosity, to seek knowledge by asking questions, and the yearning for learning, having that strong desire to learn something. When we come into this world as little babes, all of these things are very prevalent with us, So the theme of this program, we use Men in Black. It's not a play on the movie Men in Black. We want you to clearly understand that. But it symbolizes something much bigger. It symbolizes faith and vision, a vision of these young men seeing themselves, having kept the faith, worked hard, and completed the requirements to graduate and march across that stage wearing black, in the symbol of the cap and gown. So this is what we mean when we say Men in Black, okay? In this the State of the Union Barack Obama gave in 2012, and I guess it's just a coincidence how this program started in 2012, shortly after his initiative was implemented. But he expressed concern for programs like Project M.O.S.T. in this quote. He said, "I am reaching out to some of America's leading foundations and corporations on a new initiative to help young men of color facing tough odds to stay on track and reach their full potential." Well, I feel this call to action is still relevant today. It hasn't diminished at all. Here it is 10 years later, and that call to action is still relevant. A renowned English author, whose name, his pen name anyway, was George Eliot. But I found out later that George Eliot was actually a female by the name of Mary Ann Evans. And she wrote this quote: "It's never too late to be what you might have been." It's never too late to be what you might have been. I see that as being very profound. And the way I interpret it, it means just never give up on your dreams. You got a right to have dreams. Keep those dreams alive. Another internationally recognized author and speaker, and I call a leadership guru, John C. Maxwell. He authored a book. It was entitled Own Your Dreams, Discovering Your Purpose in Life. Now, in this book, he states, a dream is what you desire if anything and everything is possible. And now think about that. If you could just put together a dream and everything that you desired and hope for is right there at your disposal to make it happen. Well, this occasion today is about owning your dreams, owning your dreams. Mr. Maxwell recommends that you do 5 things to put yourself in the best possible position to receive your dream. It's about preparation. First, he says, physical preparation. Get your body in optimal shape to pursue your dream. That doesn't mean you got to be like Mike Tyson or Muhammad Ali or anybody. It just means putting yourself in the most favorable position to make your dreams become reality. Mental preparation is the next one. Read and study in areas of your greatest interest. Next, experiential preparation. Engage in activities in areas related to your interests. Then visual preparation. And he suggests putting up pictures of people and things who inspired you. Keep them out in front of you. Next, he says hero preparation. Hero preparation. Read about and try to meet people you admire and who inspire you. Last is another quote I want to tell you about, is by a gentleman named Ray Bradbury. He's an American author and screenwriter. And this quote really stuck with me. He says, "Love what you do and do what you love." Very simple statement, but it's profound. I hate to see people who spend 20 and 25 years in a job and they don't like it. You know, just don't understand that. Why would you spend all of that time doing something you don't enjoy? Now, most people who know me know I enjoy what I do. I love what I do. I wouldn't have been here this long if I didn't. And I'm encouraging you to do the same thing. Pursue what you love and love what you do. I don't believe God made mistakes. I don't think he gave us talents in certain areas not for us to follow those talents. I think that everything he gave us is designed to help you be successful in life. So love what you do and do what you love. This, I'm going to end. I mentioned earlier about that hero preparation. I haven't known our speaker that long, who's here for today, but the way that I met him, I was introduced to a video clip, a YouTube clip on him. And when I saw all the accomplishments he had made, and I even heard him talk about his background, and he's come a long way. He's a person to admire and a person to kind of follow. So I'm going to step aside and let Ms. Kayla Thompson introduce our keynote speaker for today. Ms. Thompson.
Good morning, everyone. And thank you to Mr. Salong for that profound occasion. My name is Kayla Tunstall. I am the Administrative Assistant 3 here at Project M.O.S.T. And it is a pleasure and an honor to be able to present to you all our keynote speaker for today, Dr. Derwin Cisnet. A native New Yorker, Derwin Cisnet was born and raised in a neighborhood in desperate need of revitalization. While he attended a high-performing high school in an affluent part of the city, his daily commute to and from school highlighted the stark contrast between the two neighborhoods. His passion for developing holistic communities was born from that experience, which led him to become a partner of Maslow Development Incorporated. Maslow is a real estate and community development firm that advises, designs, and develops mixed-use communities anchored by high-performing schools. Dr. Cisnet has spent the last decade in community development, public education, and venture capital, with a particular focus on coalescing and maximizing community assets. Prior to Maslow, Dr. Cisnet co-founded and served as the CEO of Gestalt Community Schools, also known as GCS. This is a charter management organization that develops high-performing, community-based charter schools here in Memphis, Tennessee. Under his leadership, GCS grew into one of the highest performing networks of schools in Tennessee and anchored over 40 acres of a mixed-use development that he spearheaded, including a performing arts center and affordable housing. Dr. Cisnet earned his BA in psychology from Emory University, a Master's of Fine Arts in Creative Writing from Hollins University, and a PhD in educational psychology from the University of Memphis. He has held board seats at arts, healthcare, foundation, and education-based companies. In 2015, Dr. Cisnet became the youngest person to chair the board of Memphis Light, Gas, and Water, the nation's largest 3-tier public utility. In 2019, he joined the inaugural board of the governor-appointed Tennessee Public Charter School Commission. He is a Broad Academy Fellow and a member of the Aspen Global Leadership Network. Derwin has spent the last decade in community development and public education, with a particular focus on maximizing community assets. With expertise in charter school management, social impact investing, and real estate development, he is passionate about leveraging entrepreneurship, innovation, and systems thinking to provide equitable access to thriving communities. Please, let's give a warm welcome for our keynote speaker, Dr. Derwin Cisnet.
Thank you for that introduction, Ms. Tunstall. And Mr. Salam, thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to share a little bit about my story, and hopefully will serve as a source of encouragement for those of you who are aspiring entrepreneurs, and those of you who are currently entrepreneurs and maybe a tough predicament, and those of you just in other spaces that might align with my past experiences. And so I want to share some brief remarks, and also want to leave some time for Q&A. I know sometimes in these kinds of engagements, there isn't an opportunity to ask those burning questions that you might have. And so I don't want to spend too much time talking about me when I could particularly answer any questions that you all might have that might pertain to your life story in the moment. So maybe I'll start with a little bit of context. As Ms. Tunstall described, I'm a native New Yorker, born and raised in Queens, New York, in a neighborhood called Far Rockaway. And Far Rockaway, for those of you who might not have been to New York or might not be familiar with that side of the city, has one of the highest concentrations of housing projects in the entire country. And that experience contrasted with my experience of high school, as was mentioned, of going to a high school in a much more affluent side of the city, really stuck with me as I continued into my formative years. And when I think about that experience of going from living in one place and then going to school in a totally different neighborhood, and what that meant for my psyche, it caused me to, in fact, leave high school, graduate from high school a year early to get out of my neighborhood, and ultimately led me out of New York. And then that led me to Atlanta for Emory. And when I was at Emory and I was in Atlanta, for those of you who know Atlanta, I was introduced to a whole different environment. It was a Black Mecca. It was this Black excellence all around me, which I hadn't experienced as much when I grew up in the neighborhood that I grew up in. And when I experienced that, it caused me to step back and think about my own story, my own trajectory, and I asked why so many times. And the why never got answered in those moments, but I continued to press on and ask why. And it was my last year in undergrad. One of my professors at Emory, I was taking a poetry class, thinking it'd be an easy class to take. I loved to write since I was a kid. It turned out to be one of the most difficult classes I took my senior year, so probably not the best idea. But when I took that class, my professor, Natasha Trethewey, encouraged me to get a Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing. She thought that I had a gift in writing. She thought that I should pursue that some more. And for me, I took her up on that offer, mainly because I wanted to continue writing and understanding my own story. And so I went off to graduate school and got a Master's of Fine Arts in Creative Writing. And it was there that during my last year, one of my colleagues who was in another program was student teaching in a middle school in Virginia, in a community that looked very much like Far Rockaway in my own mind, at least metaphorically and figuratively. And when she was student teaching a class and wanted me to come in and do one unit on poetry for this middle school. And I thought I was going to go in and do this poetry unit, maybe do some spoken word, maybe inspire them, and they would walk away thinking that I was, amazing. And in the end, they inspired me and encouraged me to teach. I found my gift in the classroom. In fact, both my parents were teachers before they moved to the States. My family's from Barbados, and I was first born in my family in the country. But when they moved, they pivoted away from teaching and never really, as most teachers would tell you, never encourage their kids to teach. They want them to do something else. And so my parents never encouraged me to teach. But when I was in that situation, I said, you know what, that's what I want to do. I want to teach. And so I moved to Memphis, just changed everything that I was thinking about in my trajectory, or at least what I wanted in my future. Still wanted to understand my own story, still wanted to answer those whys that I asked. And I moved to Memphis, and for those of you who are familiar, at the time, there was Memphis City Schools and Shelby County Schools. And so I applied to teach in both school districts. I got my alternative certifications and licenses so I could teach. And I never heard back from them, never heard back from either district. But I wanted to teach, and I didn't want to take no for an answer. So I ended up going across the bridge to maybe your competitor, Mid-South Community College, that's what it was called at the time, and ended up teaching part-time, making the equivalent of maybe about $10,000 a year. But I was in the classroom. I loved it. I was finally doing the thing that I felt like I was called to do. And it was in that moment that I started to look at the students in my class. I had some high school students who were concurrent students, and I had mostly adults in my class. And they all had the same look in their faces around 2, 3 in the afternoon, the same look that I had on my face when I was in high school, which was, this is all great what's happening here, but I can't focus on what's happening here because I'm thinking about what's happening outside of here, what's going on at home, what's going on in my neighborhood. And that was a aha moment for me. And it caused me to step back to think, okay, wait, maybe I'm not doing this the right way. Yes, I want to be in the classroom. I want to teach. I want to be an educator. The main reason why is is really being challenged by the experience that I think my students are having right now. So how can I figure this out? And so that's when I started to pursue a PhD at the University of Memphis to better understand, again, my own story, but then now people who look like me, who seem to face a similar experience about what was going on outside of the classroom. And while I was working on that, a colleague of mine found out that there was a neighborhood in Hickory Hill that was in need of a school. The local church started a community development corporation to think about how to address that need, and thought that I might be a good fit to help them start this school. And so I had no experience starting a school. In fact, remember, I couldn't even get a job teaching at Memphis City Schools or Shelby County Schools. So how could I even imagine that they would allow me to start a school? But I believed in the work. I believed in what needed to happen in that neighborhood, Hickory Hill, which reminded me very much of my own neighborhood of Far Rockaway. And I said, I'll take you up on that. In fact, I'll write the charter school application. I'll do it for free because I'm so passionate about it. And I did. And we ended up getting that school approved. That was back in 2007. We were the only new school approved in the entire state of Tennessee at the time. And I was excited to really continue on my path of what I thought God called me to do. And so here I am now starting this school. One of my colleagues and sister in this work, Yetta Lewis, was the founding principal of that school. And we were off to the races. The school went off right out the gate, was featured in the Wall Street Journal. I had a lot of accolades, went on to have some great performance just from the beginning. And I continue to scratch my head around the why, and if I was doing what it was that I was called to do, if I was doing enough. Because again, while our kids were being served, in many ways, I was doing the same thing to our Power Center Academy scholars that was done to me, and that they were getting a great education, but they still had to go home to really rough environments. So while all that was happening, while I was asking those whys, Yetta and I forged and formed what we now call Gestalt Community Schools, which is a network of charter schools that encompasses Power Center Academy, as well as 4 or 5 other schools. And so we were building this network of schools to address a need in Hickory Hill and beyond. And at the same time, I continue to ask, what else? What more could we do to address the needs in Hickory Hill? And that was when there was another aha moment of, what would it look like to design and develop a whole neighborhood around the school? So as opposed to me wondering what happens to our kids when they leave every day. And I know being in a classroom is challenging enough, running a school is challenging enough, and getting into real estate development is challenging enough. But in my mind, the only way to address the real need and the core aspect of what's happening in our students' and families' lives is to really look at the big picture. And so I stepped back and said, what would it look like to buy up a bunch of property and build a school, a neighborhood from scratch, so to speak? And so came along this old site called the Marina Cove. Many of you might be familiar with it. At the time, the site is still the same, Winchester and Mendenhall. At the time, it was an old abandoned apartment complex. I see some of you nodding your head, so you know it. It was about 24 acres of blight, 394 units that were collectively appraised at $100. And somehow, some way, I said, okay, let's buy that site. I think that's the perfect site. Even though most people were running away from it, most people thought there was nothing you could do with it. In my mind, this was a perfect opportunity to develop a mixed-use community, and not to walk away from a community or turn our backs on a community, but instead embrace a community. And so just because some of you I know are aspiring entrepreneurs or want to be entrepreneurs or are currently entrepreneurs, or really even if you're not, you're facing challenges, I'll share with you just a little bit of the details around how we made that work, just to give you an idea of the amount of persistence that really does need to be involved in something you believe in. And so that site was really in bad shape, and the owners wanted to sell it to us for about $1.5 million. And in fact, I only found that out because I went to the auction. The site was up for auction, and I promise you, I had no money to buy the site. So in fact, I stood very still at that auction because I didn't want anybody to think I would buy it by accident. But I wanted to see how much they were going to sell that property for, and if I could convince the owners somewhere in the parking lot maybe to sell that property to me so that we could do the work that we wanted to do. So found out it was they wanted a little over $1.5 million for it, and so we worked out a deal with them to essentially buy it as a tax write-off, and then raise another $400,000 to address the back tax that they owe the city and county, and then get another $200,000 to cover the remaining difference. So we did all of that. We were able to figure that out. And at the same time, we found out there was another main point is, in all this, I continue to lean on advisors and really, really smart people. So please don't get the impression I figured any of this out by myself. In fact, I tell people all the time, if I've ever failed at anything, I've done it alone. If I've ever been successful, I've done it in partnership. And so along this entire path, I continue to reach out to experts. And one advisor who I still lean on to this day, who's big in the real estate space, encouraged me to look at the land around that site. So I thought he was going to tell me I was crazy, don't look at buying 24 acres of blighted property. But instead, he told me I should look to see what else is there, because once we build up that site, people are going to want the site around it, and that's going to be more expensive to address later. So just get it now. So that's when I found out there was another almost 19 acres of land that was landlocked by that property, zoned residential in a community in the middle of a community that people were moving out of at the time, and it was owned by a group out of Boston. So out of towners who had no idea about the real value of that site. And so we were able to buy that from them for under $200,000, believe it or not. And so now we pieced together two parcels that make up almost 43 acres of land. And then we were off to the races. And at the same time, again, Gestalt Community Schools was building up, which meant it was building up a balance sheet, meaning it had enough capital to support a development that we were proposing. And we, in the end, ended up building a middle school, performing arts center, single family homes in partnership with Habitat for Humanity. And then we eyed the shopping plaza directly across the street that was underutilized at best, and put our high school there temporarily as a leaseholder, knowing that one day we might buy that site. And all that is now come to fruition. Gestalt Community School now owns that other parcel. And in fact, not only is there a high school there, but Power Center Elementary is there, medical clinic and dental clinic, Christ Community Health Services is there. And so we were excited about all that was happening. And again, believe it or not, there was another aha moment for me, a step back to say, well, what could I do to really increase the value of this value proposition of developing not just schools, but holistic communities? And so that's when I stepped away from Gestalt to then think about this work that we now call Maslow Development, Inc. And a mutual colleague of mine connected me to a partner and who was thinking about the same work but on the West Coast. And we joined forces to create Maslow, to now develop holistic communities like what we did at Gestalt, but really taking it not to another level per se, but really thinking about it from beginning to end. So as opposed to building the plane as we're flying it, what would it look like to actually design the plane with the community, then build it? And so that's what we do now. Our first work actually started in Tulsa, Oklahoma, with a group that visited to see what we were doing in Memphis at the time. And they wanted to revitalize what we now know as Black Wall Street, what was decimated over 100 years ago. And we worked with them to design and develop the first of its kind type of school in Oklahoma, which is called a partnership school. So it's not a charter school, it's not a traditional public school with the district, but it's a district school that is run privately. And we have worked with them to not only develop and launch that school, so that school has been around now for about 4 years, but also to secure another 23 acres of land to design and develop a community that school would anchor. And so that was the first project that Maslow really did out the gate. But we also have what we call our Lighthouse Project, which some of you might be familiar with. Murmurings of it are getting into the news. We are still working with community members in the Binghamton neighborhood to design and develop it, because a big part of what we do is we co-design and use human-centered design to develop our communities, as opposed to imposing our idea of what we think a community should want and need. We actually work with community members to design that for them. And so we are developing that lighthouse. It's a 15-acre mixed-use development. It will include some of the assets that I described, affordable housing, knowing that there's a real need for affordable housing in Memphis. It will also include a school, health and wellness assets, and workforce assets. And so just that's a little bit of a color around the work that we're doing, a little bit about my story. And I really want to end with just a note of, something that happened to me a few years ago. I was traveling back from Chicago and wanted to, I was getting on a late flight. My daughter, who's now 11, but at the time she might have been 3 or 4. And I wanted to make sure I got home in time for her bedtime. And I was coming back, and a colleague of mine was also traveling back to Memphis. We were at the same meeting, and we took a taxi to the airport together. And on our way, he shared with me that he had a direct flight to Memphis, which I didn't realize it was a direct flight. I was connecting from Chicago to some other place. When I found out there was a direct flight and I knew I could get home in time for bed, I reached out to the airport, called the airline, and the agent on the phone told me, sorry, there are no more seats on that plane. You're gonna have to stick with the flight you have and get home around midnight. And so we get to the airport. I go to the desk agent or at check-in as if I haven't already spoken to someone on the phone. I ask her about this flight to Memphis, this direct flight, and if I could get on it. She tells me the same thing. Sorry, there are no more seats on the plane. Eventually we go through security. I'm walking alongside my colleague as if I have a seat on that plane, even though I don't have a seat on that plane. And we get to the gate. I ask the gate agent, hey, is there any way I can get on this flight? She insists there's no way. The flight's now starting to board. I go to her one more time and I say, is there anything you could do? I really want to see if there's another seat on that plane. She says, nope, sorry, there are no seats on the plane. I watch the plane board. They're ready to close the gate. I go up one more time. I know she's annoyed with me. She's already told me 3 or 4 times there are no more seats. And I ask her one more time. She says, let me make a phone call. She picks up the phone, someone says something on the other end. Come to find out, not only was there a seat on the plane, but the flight that I was on just got canceled. So she was able to squeeze me on. Now, mind you, I was in the all the way in the back by the bathroom, but I was on the plane and I was headed home to see my daughter. And I share that because at the end of the day, whether it's entrepreneurship or whether it's a challenge that you're facing, you're going to face no a million times. And I know you hear this, and people are going to tell you something is impossible until it's actually possible. And it takes your vision and your persistence to continue to push forward, because I had 5 different people essentially tell me that there wasn't a seat on the plane. These are professionals in their industry. These are people who actually know what the plane, what the dynamics of the plane are. And everyone told me no. And I continue to ask and ask and ask. And it was something that was really important to me. So I continue to push the subject. And eventually what was impossible became possible, not because of some magic or something that came from out of the air, but really just persistence and the will to really make something, push something into existence. And so I don't know if that'll serve as a source of encouragement for any of you all, but as I think about my own entrepreneurship journey and I think about my partner, Nora, and the work that we do together, there are so many challenges that come. And, I hope no one walks away thinking that the work that we've done is easy by any stretch, or, you just have to really think hard and it'll work out, because there's so many times we think that it's not going to happen, but we just have to keep pushing forward. And so I'll leave you all with that. And like I said, I want to just give some time and space for any Q&A, just recognizing that some of you all might have some questions. And if not, I can just keep on telling stories. So with that, again, thank you for having me, and would love to answer any questions you all might have.
Thank you, Dr. Sisnick. Please, if you have any questions, please go ahead and ask your questions. Raise your hand, we'll recognize you, or put them in the chat.
Hello, Dr. Sisnick. I'm sorry, you go ahead.
And I'll wait till the end. Elaine Swain. I'm gonna try to, I had problems logging on. Thank you. Somebody else has already started talking.
Okay.
Oh, I appreciate that. And you could have gone ahead. Good morning, Dr. Sisnick. Your talk was wonderful. I feel like I've gotten a chance to know you. I lived in New York for about 10 years. I'm from the DC area, so I know Far Rockaway quite well. I lived in Queens as well. Anyway, it sounds like you started on the education track, but now you've advanced to trying to build healthy communities, which is definitely what we need in our communities of color. And so my question is, I heard the part about education, housing, and healthcare. What is your organization doing to address the workforce development aspect, or who are you partnered with for that aspect, for individuals that live in those communities that are having difficulty maybe finding employment in order to afford that good housing and stay in those wonderful neighborhoods that you're creating?
I appreciate the question, and sorry if I missed that, because yes, that's workforce is also a core aspect of what we do. So it's housing, health and wellness, workforce, and education. Those are the core components. And for every community, it looks a little different. And I mentioned a little bit earlier that we utilize what we call human-centered design, which is a method of design work that really teases out what a community wants and needs, what we think is better than just simply asking. So for instance, we might go into a community and we might hear that it's a food desert. And so the immediate thing that comes to mind is, well, we need a grocery store. But what if we asked the right questions, tested out some ideas that are relatively inexpensive to try out? We might find that really it's not a grocery store that's needed, but maybe it's a farm or a farmer's market, or something that still addresses the food need, but without the brick and mortar of a grocery store. And so likewise, from a workforce component, we've looked at places all across the country that have maker spaces, creative office spaces, workforce programs. We just did a workforce study this past fall. And we'll continue to do that. At the same time, we'll ask community members and through human-centered design and through our community engagement meetings, what it is that they actually want and need. And so there's a lot happening in Binghamton now. So I'm really grateful for, not just in a workforce space or education space, but I think about Collage Dance Collective and the work happening there. And so we don't want to presume that we know what the workforce solution is. That's something that we'll continue to work on over the next 6 to 12 months before we then roll out something that we think the community would utilize. And so I know it doesn't specifically answer that question. I guess the headline is it can be formed in a multitude of ways, and we want to make sure the community's voice dictates that.
Actually, you did answer that. It tells me that you're looking for opportunities, and it sounds like you're very much utilizing kind of an agile method, way of thinking in order to change and pivot and be flexible with whatever that community needs. It's really fantastic what you're doing. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Hey, Dr. Sisson.
Hi.
My name's Carl Slappy. Trying to find out, is it possible that we can get in contact with you outside of this meeting?
Absolutely. And Mr. Salam has my contact info. And so happy to share, and I could even put my email in the chat. And you could also, email is probably better than LinkedIn, just because I don't check my LinkedIn as often, but I'll just put my email in the chat right now, and feel free to, email me directly.
I definitely go about doing that. It's some things that you said that actually inspired me. I'm currently on a journey of trying to create several businesses. And some of the things that you mentioned, I wish I had caught it all, but I was handling something else. Some of the things that you mentioned directly relate to some of that components of what I'm doing.
Okay, well, I'll be happy to help if I can.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question.
Okay.
May I ask now?
Yes, please.
Okay. Would you, I'm a professor at Southwest Tennessee Community College, but would you elaborate on sometimes it's okay to get a no, and elaborate on that? And I know you're saying sometimes you push forward till you get the answer you need, but sometimes it's okay to get an answer no, and how to be respectful and think about other options possibly.
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked that, because yes, sometimes that the idea of working towards a yes could actually work against us, right? We could end up doing something that we actually aren't called to do, or that we shouldn't be doing. And those no's are sometimes those red flags that are flying in front of us saying, no, go in the other direction. I think the example of me getting on that flight, that I hope you all, what I would hope you would take from it is every single, conversation I had, whether it's with the gate agent or the person on the phone or the check-in agent, it was always a respectful conversation. It was never a, you don't know what you're doing, you don't know your job, I know better than you. It was always from a vantage point of, I know you have more information than I have. What I'm asking is there any way you can just double check that information so that I could access or get this thing that I want? And the other piece is I asked multiple people the same thing, right? And so if you look at this as a multidimensional problem, sometimes someone might tell you no, because from their vantage point, it doesn't look possible, which means you have to go to the other side and ask someone else, because they might have more information or different information that might tell you that it's possible. So I think even as I was trying to get to a yes, what I was doing again was not trying to create some kind of magic where there was no seat on the plane and I wanted a seat to magically appear. I wanted to just find out through all the different resources, that all the different dimensions, what was possible. I think the other side to it is there are times that my partner Nora and I, people have told us no for whether it's a project we're working on or an aspect of the project we're working on. And those no's turned out to be opportunities for us to find yeses in another area that actually still supported the work we want to do. So whether that's securing a plot of land and then finding out that that land is no longer available and you take that as a no, or finding out that that land, there's a better plot of land someplace else. It's taking that no to understand that, okay, maybe there are other avenues to explore, as opposed to saying, well, maybe my idea isn't good enough, or maybe I'm not good enough. I think there are ways to take that no that don't cause you to stop everything, but cause you to just revisit the path that you're on and whether you're going in the right direction.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Absolutely.
I see a question in the chat, Dr. Sisnick. I think that's Mr. Davis. He says, now that you have had the success you've had, reviving and giving new life to a blighted area, are you seeing other places in the Memphis area to duplicate?
I think whether it's in Memphis or other places, the challenges are pretty, they run deep. And even when I was in the charter school space or in more directly tied to schools, I think there was always a question around, do we need more schools? And I think the answer for me was always, yes, we need more high quality schools. I think similarly, when we look at the affordable housing, that it's objectively, the answer is yes, we need more quality affordable housing. And we need that in so many other places. I think could Maslow do it all? Absolutely not. Could Maslow play its part? Yes. Are there other folks who need to play a part? Yes. So I think the short answer is there are other places in Memphis. There are other places across the country, but certainly other places in Memphis. And the reality is we just need all hands on deck to support this kind of work and other people thinking about the work in similar ways.
Okay. I hope that addresses your question, Mr. Davis. I have another question here. It says, I wanted to ask, how did you know that that particular blighted property was up for sale? How did you purchase it? Did you have investors? Did you take a business loan? If you had investors, how did you persuade them to invest? If business loan, what type or kind of business loan was needed? I'm not sure if these are personal questions. If so, I would love to email you and ask more questions.
I'll be happy to answer. So the site itself was it was blighted and in bad shape, that Marina Cove property I described. And in fact, I remember it like it was yesterday. I was headed to the gym on a Saturday, and actually is one of the quotes that Mr. Salam shared around just taking care of your mental and physical health. And so I was a Saturday. I typically don't do Saturday workouts, but was headed to the gym on a Saturday, found out that it didn't open that early that Saturday. So I was about to head home, but something just said, go in the other direction. And so I did, and I drove by that site. And that's when I saw that it was up for auction. So up until that moment, there were no for sale signs. It was just in bad shape. And then I eventually saw that it was up for auction. Once it was up for auction, as I shared, I went to that auction. It ended up not selling. They didn't get a high enough bid, but that's when I found out that they wanted more than $1 million for the property. They wanted about 1.6 million. And then I was able to work through the details around. And so the short answer is I didn't have the capital at the time, but I was resourceful. I found out that because we're a nonprofit, that they could give us a tax write-off. So we made $1 million of it a tax write-off. So that was essentially no money we had to contribute and money that they got on their taxes or a contribution that helped with their tax burden. Then there was still another 600,000 we had to figure out. And I, being resourceful, found out that they were 3 years in arrears with their taxes. So they owed almost about $400,000 worth of property taxes, which in the city of Memphis, if you don't pay those taxes, you can lose your property. And so I knew they were up against a timetable to address that. And so by state law, the state can't forgive taxes. At least they couldn't back then. And so I was able to piece together some public dollars to address their tax burden, and then fill the rest with a gap from grants from the city. So just had to be really resourceful. And then as I shared that other property, which then was almost the same size, that was selling for under $200,000. As an organization, we were still growing and still very early. We didn't have the capital to do that either. But we were able to take out a 5-year low interest loan for that, knowing how viable the property was once we got it all rezoned. So it was definitely a business decision. It was definitely a risk, but it was a calculated risk around, well, worst case scenario, if we can't make this project work, we at least have land that is more valuable than it was before we purchased it.
Excellent, excellent.
I had another question for you.
Okay, very common.
Okay. Dr. Sennett, what was, I'm sorry, what was the process of getting everything rezoned?
So in terms of from a zoning standpoint, that old site, Marina Cove, already was zoned for multifamily because it had a bunch of apartments on it. It wasn't zoned at the time to have a school or to have some of the other assets like the Performing Arts Center. And so that kind of zoning was actually what we call a PUD, a planned unit development. So we actually went before City Council with a plan that our architects put together that actually described what our vision was for the entire site. That would include housing, would include a school, would include the Performing Arts Center. And mainly because we needed to be able to describe a scenario where there were enough streets and we were able to account for the right amount of parking, because you can't just build something and hope people like it. You have to build something that has to be approved by the city that use could happen. And so we actually went before the Land Use Control Board and got the PUD approved so that we could do what it is that we did.
That was a short version. I was looking for a very detailed version. I stopped at the city Shelby County zoning. I guess I don't exactly know what to call it.
The Land Use Control Board?
I guess that's where it is, but I definitely spoke with an architect in there, and he gave me some of the similar details. When you're dealing with stuff like that, you got to put engineers in and everybody. I understand that process, but I don't know exactly how deep it goes, and I was hoping you could give me more insight on it.
Oh yes, it's a long, or not a long, but it's a very thorough process where you want to engage architects and engineers, because you'll need to do traffic studies, things that I'm not capable of doing, but that architects and engineers are capable of doing. Understand how people enter and exit a site, how many cars are needed for parking, depending on how many people are going to be on that site, how many school teachers, how many houses, and that all dictates what you'll end up planning.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next question. Well, I have one here that was sent. What do you see as the greatest challenge to a student developing or cultivating an entrepreneurial mindset to foster change?
I think it's the being able to build a muscle, and muscle might not be the right word, but being able to accept how challenging it is, all the hurdles that are involved. As Carl just described, you have a great idea and you want to put it together, but then you find out there's a whole long process. And you got to go through that entire process just to get to something that everyone agrees is a great idea. So then you have to find the capital to get people to help you through that process. How are you going to pay for architects, engineers? And it's they're continuing to find ways to be resourceful to get to that idea. And the hurdles just keep coming. I wish I could say, yeah, after doing this for the last 10 plus years, that it gets easier. And it really doesn't, because I think you then build that muscle, and then you try to create a higher hurdle to jump over. It's just the natural part of what we do. Or at least in the entrepreneurial space, you get through one challenge and you come up with another one. And so I think it's just really building that mindset more than anything, and that muscle to accept how challenging it is, but to keep going after it. I mean, I didn't even get into the details of the Performing Arts Center, but we barely have money to buy the land, so we clearly didn't have enough money to build a Performing Arts Center. But at the time, in 2008, if you look through the records, a tornado came through Hickory Hill. I found out, just being resourceful through one of my colleagues who's an architect, that in rural communities, they build tornado shelters and make gyms out of them, and make school buildings out of them, airports out of them. And so I then took that information and said, well, why can't we get FEMA funding to build a tornado shelter that doubles the Performing Arts Center? So long as the primary purpose is a tornado shelter, whenever a tornado ever comes through again. And so that's how we got the funding to do that. That was about $3.5 million of funding that would have gone to another community that experienced a tornado just like Hickory Hill, but why not Hickory Hill? So I think I also continue to ask those questions, like, why not us? Why not this community? And that's helped me to persist and get over those hurdles.
Good. And I think you actually shared, I think, what I feel is the core, and that's developing that entrepreneurial mindset. We're on that journey trying to convince others, because it not only helps when you're trying to go into business, it helps across the board. It teaches you that resourcefulness, how to recognize opportunities and things of that nature. So that's what this program is really all about, trying to help cultivate that entrepreneurial mindset in everyone. I just can imagine what it would be like if everyone thought that way. Wouldn't be any limit to what we could do, So I appreciate all of your experiences that you shared, because this is where the rubber meets the road. You mentioned building that muscle. Yeah, I think it should start at a very early age, where students learn about entrepreneurial thinking and that kind of thing. It will not only help in the business community, but it help in the academic world as well. So that's part of our charge at this point. Are there any more questions for Dr. Sisnick?
I'm not sure if there are. I was going to say that I appreciate you all having me, and I know sometimes it's not easy to ask questions in this kind of forum, and so that's why I shared my email. And so happy to stay engaged in any way that's possible, and really grateful for the opportunity, the platform to share just even my own story, because it's just my story, and no one has to care or listen to it. So happy that you all are here this morning, and yeah, looking forward to continuing any conversations that make sense down the road. So thank you.
Yes, sir. Definitely. We want to form a relationship. Okay. So thank you so much, Dr. Sisnick. You were excellent. I think the audience really appreciate you and all the gems that you shared. And we have just another piece of the program to go, and that's to recognize these young men for their outstanding efforts in the midst of all this turmoil.
Well, thank you again. I'll get out of the way and let you all do that.
We thank you so much, and we will be in touch.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you again.
Hello.
Hello.
Elaine Swain. I have something to say, but I didn't want to be out of order. I want to thank everyone that has something to say. My classmate, my professor is on the line, Professor Elliott. Southwest has been great for me. And I was having problems logging on, but something told me not to miss this story. And I appreciate that's the hearing the conversation, the testimony of Dr. Sennett. And I'm like, still have a similar story. I come from a county in North Carolina. It's the poorest county in in the district, and it's less resources. And my father was a veteran. My mother was a sharecropper, and she sharecropped all her days and took care of 26 children and raised 16 live. And I didn't want it to work at Weyerhaeuser. And that's the only big company down there at that time. So I went in the military. And when I went in the military, it taught me how to survive, but it didn't teach me the skills that I needed to survive in the world. So my life drifted from here to there, and my life began to get on track when I came to Southwest Community College. And since I've been at Southwest Community College, I had a broad vision, but now that my vision and my mindset has changed, and I was 2 credits from getting a business degree, but I feel that I needed more. So I branched off in accounting, and accounting has, with the information, the courses, the additional courses, it has made me thankful. Now that I'm about to graduate, I have problems, but my problem is I'm going from a skilled worker to a technical worker, and it makes a difference. And the information that the professor give you, it goes a long ways. But I just want to thank everyone for sharing their stories, because it like to go in the well. I'm putting all that knowledge behind me, up under me, to go further. But I'm dreaming big, but sometimes the direction you choose may not be the way to go. And it's one course that stick with me, and it was the fundamentals of communication. The fundamentals of communication has taught me how to appreciate the things that I receive from other courses, because communication is key to the understanding. And I, as a minister, this has opened my mindset to go further. And I just thank the speaker today for this sharing in on his vision and how he kept going on, because sooner or later a door will open. And I just thank him for the story that he was determined to get home to his daughter. And I'm determined to fulfill my goal, but I can't do it by myself. So, and it's going to take teamwork. And I just thank everybody for being on this call. It's let me know that you can do it, but you can't do it by yourself. And I just thank everyone for just sharing their opportunities and conversations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Swain. You know, I've had a chance to hear you before, you know, and you speak with so much passion. We really appreciate you attending this particular event, you know, but know that you're not in it by yourself, okay? You got a whole community of people supporting you. So we're going to move on and recognize these gentlemen for their outstanding achievements. Ms. Tunstall, are you about ready? There we go.
Good morning. My name is Deborah Davis, and I'm one of the counselors here at Project M.O.S.T. And what we're about to do now is recognize those gentlemen who have been successful during the fall 2021 semester. We know, as Mr. Salam stated, these past couple of years have been extremely challenging, but we feel that not only these gentlemen who are receiving these awards, all of the gentlemen and all of the students enrolled within the institution should be commended on being able to continue on and complete the semester through all of the challenges that they were facing. The first set of awards that we will be issuing will be the Project M.O.S.T. Academic Achievement Award. And these gentlemen would have obtained at least a 2.5 to a 2.99 GPA. These recipients are Mr. Terry Farris, Mr. Serene M. Baye, Mr. William Farris, Mr. Wandario Morrison, Mr. Andre Phillips, Mr. Cayman Pruitt, Mr. Nicholas Terrence,
Mr. Juan Morales, Mr. Jaron Mitchell, Mr. Calvin Wiley, Mr. Alante Brazel, Mr. Caleb Beard, Mr. Dominic Thomas, Mr. Troy McKinney, Mr. Javon Robinson, Mr. Jaron Nunez Redden, Mr. Joshua Wilhite. The next set of awards we'll be awarding is called the Academic Excellence Awards. This is for the gentlemen that have earned, I want to put emphasis on earn, a 3.0 and a 399, 2 or 399. Throughout the program, we teach our guys to, we challenge them to be thinkers. And we allow them not to be, we teach them not to be afraid to think outside the box to accomplish their goals. So with that, I said, we're here to honor these guys. And the first award is
Noah Boyd, Mr. Tyrese Cowens, Mr. Maceo Fuller, Mr. Marcotis Hall, Mr. Antonio Hill, Mr. Derek Jones, Mr. King Jones, Mr. Dontre McClinton, Mr. Taurus McDaniel, and Mr. Darius Wicks.
Mr. Kevin Lane, Mr. Oscar Rodriguez, Mr. Kivion Moore, Mr. Eric Clark, Mr. Zuri Muhammad, Mr. Caleb Mosley, Mr. D'Angelo Williams,
This next set of awards, as Mr. Robinson stated, we teach the gentlemen to think outside of the box, and also we ask them to do their very best, service excellence, and to be excellent in all that you do. This is the Black Diamond Award, and these gentlemen have earned a 4.0 GPA for the fall 2021 semester. Mr. Langston Brown, Mr. James Day Hase, Joseph Hawkins, Mr. Siddiqui Milimono, Mr. Carl Slappy, Mr. Tariq Wilkins,
Mr. Christopher Banks, Mr. Sakata Bowden, Mr. Brian Anderson, Mr. Thomas Hampton. The next set of awards is what we call our GRIT Awards. And what is GRIT? GRIT is the resilience to keep going, the persistence to try new and improved strategies, and the determination to view failure as a path to new learning. And grit. A grit allows our students to get back up once they have fallen down. It allows them to review situations. It also allows them to identify new strategies as far as trying to achieve their goal. But the most of all, it allows them to get back up and try again. Each year, when we meet to determine who will be our GRIT honoree, I must say the process gets tougher and tougher. Because in your heart, you know, each student you work with day in and day out are faced with the many challenges that life throws them. And each of them are well deserving of this award. Well, after the tough decision, this year's recipient possesses all three of those qualities: resilience, persistence, and determination. I have witnessed this young man's tenacity and efforts throughout this semester. Not only do we have faculty and staff high expectations for our students, but students have high expectations for themselves. This year's recipient has been very dependable during these challenging times. Every time I call this young man and ask him, is he available to do this or participate in that, he said, yes, sir, I can. This year's recipient, through his maturity, I'm glad to say, has balanced his work and his college education in order to achieve his academic goals. This young man is grounded with the core values of the Project M.O.S.T. And with this, I present to you Mr. Kevion Moore.
This next recipient of the GRIT Award is an individual who has exemplified grit and knowing the difference about not giving up to get back up and try again. He initially enrolled in Southwest in 2018. After experiencing some serious health conditions, he had to withdraw from all courses. At that point, he was somewhat distraught because he definitely knew that he wanted to obtain his degree. He re-enrolled, met other challenges, but he continued to strive on. During the fall 2021 semester, he enrolled in his courses with the bright idea that everything is going to go extremely smooth. However, midway through the semester, he again experienced some health challenges, but he was determined not to be defeated. This recipient took his device to the hospital with him, and during those moments when he was able, he maintained contact with his instructors, completed all of the necessary coursework, and successfully completed the fall 2021 course. It is my pleasure to present the GRIT Award to Mr. Antranis Bradford. The next GRIT recipient is an individual who graduated from high school and immediately went off to a four-year institution. He excelled during that first semester, but during that second semester, he had went away from home, but close enough where he would be home, but yet he was lonesome. So he decided to come back home, but did not continue his education. After 19 years, he decided to continue what he had started. This individual enrolled in Southwest, has had exemplary grades, but at times he felt that he wasn't sure what he exactly wanted to do. With much support, yet he had other challenges and responsibilities with his job and with home. He stated that his days that he felt like that he was on the journey, but didn't quite know where he was going. During the fall semester, he had to enroll in a class that was extremely challenging to him. He had never really had a course that he was unsuccessful in. He went to tutoring continuously, but became frustrated. He came in and he spoke with me and we talked about the situation. And I let him know it's not over until it's over. Just recently this week, he did send me an email thanking me for the support that the staff has given him and encouraging him to continue on his journey. He said, although he constantly get those encouraging words, there are days that he get up and feel like, do I really know where I'm going? But just recently, he completed a major task for his major. So he decided that now I'm on the way. It's truly an example that your initial failure just can be a chance for you to see opportunities. New opportunities can come as a result of failure. No, get back up. Totally review the situation, identify new strategies, and try again. And he also states that he knows that if he continue on the path, his future will come to fruition. It is my pleasure to present Mr. Derek Boyce with this great award. Gentlemen, as Mr. Robinson stated, it is somewhat a difficult task for us to choose because all of you do show that grit and all of you do try. We encourage you to continue to try and keep on and keep that entrepreneur mindset that will propel you to success. Thank you. And now Mr. Kareem Salam, our director, will come to present additional awards.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. This award is actually considered our top award, the M.O.S.T Award. You know, and this M.O.S.T Award and its recipient represents all the values that the program espouses. We like to repeat these at every meeting. We go through these core values: continuous improvement, service excellence, accountability, commitment, enthusiasm, integrity, and teamwork. Now, this particular awardee, I have witnessed him go through many difficulties and come through them. I remember a few semesters back, he lost his beautiful wife at a very young age. And I know it was tough on him, but he stuck to it and came through it. He's a hard worker, work full time, going to school, also does other extracurricular activities. I think he's a trainer. You know, he does all those things. And every time we need him, he's there, right on point. I'd like to present this award to none other than Mr. Joe Rosser. Mr. Rosser, thank you. Thank you for all that you do. I see you on the call. They got that big broad smile, right? Thank you, Mr. Rosser. Okay. The next award. This is our Project M.O.S.T 2022 Outstanding Faculty Teamwork Award. We have faculty members, most of them are very, very committed to helping our young men, and not only our young men, but students, period, to succeed in their academic endeavors. And they have not been known to create an atmosphere of teaching and learning that actually serves to push students more towards success. This year, we are recognizing one who opens her classroom up to us on a periodic basis to come in and talk to her students and try to recruit young men into our program. And as a matter of fact, she even makes referrals for young men who she thinks would fit into our program and need our services. So this award goes to none other than Ms. Yvette K. Ellaby. Yvette K. Ellaby. Thank you, Ms. Ellaby, for all that you do. And we look forward to continue to work with you. Thank you. This next award is actually an inaugural award. This is the Outstanding Staff Teamwork Award. We recognize that not only is the faculty a team member in this effort, but even the staff, they are as well. Consistently encouraging students to acquire skills and support self-development, graduation, and career success. And in this year, we chose a young man who has established a reputation for being a person of service. You know, he makes referrals to us all the time. He's even been known to make sure students got to our success meetings, our bi-weekly meetings. So I'd like to recognize, we would, Mr. Ronald Claxton as the first recipient of our Outstanding Staff Teamwork Award. Thank you, Mr. Claxton, for all that you do. I see you working right now, right? I see him out in the elements, so he's on the job right now. We thank you so much, and please continue to help us out. Thank you. Okay, well, those are our awards, and we're coming to the end of our program for today. But I would be remiss not to acknowledge the people who've helped to make this program a success. First of all, Dr. Sisnick, we certainly appreciate you giving of your time, your knowledge, your experience, sharing your story with us that actually inspires me as an old man, right? So I know he has to have an impact on you younger generations. Also, Dr. Graham, we certainly appreciate you coming through and representing the college, the senior staff, as well as Dr. Tracy Hall, in extending that beautiful, heartfelt welcome that you did. And we really appreciate that. And she's become a good team partner to work with. You know, we've done a lot to help each other, but she's helped me probably more than I've helped her. But I'm working on it. We're in a race, right? But thank you so much. Also, I certainly would be remiss not to recognize the men in this program and their family members and friends. You know, sometimes it's been tough, to be honest with you. And if you didn't have a family member or a good friend to fall back on for support, you might not make it through, you know. So we want to recognize every young man in this program, whether you got an award or not. You mean something, you're special to us, and we want to help you to succeed. Faculty and staff, I see many of you on this call today. You know, we appreciate that kind of support. You know, I looked and I said, wow, you know, people on here that I never thought I'd see. I see my old friend, Roy Dozier over there. He's from Arkansas. Strong community work, working right now to develop a credit union, you know, and I know he's doing excellent work. So we appreciate all of y'all. I probably messed up by calling names because I miss somebody every time, but I'd be remiss not to recognize the person that hired me at Southwest, Mr. Harry Taylor. So thank you, Harry, for being there. Yeah, 29 years ago, he hired me. Thank you, sir. Lastly, my staff, you know, the Project M.O.S.T staff. I mean, they, just because I see it last don't mean that they're least important, because these are the people that make this program roll on a day-to-day basis. You know, they develop the relationship with the student, they keep the students going. I keep my office door open all the time, and I can hear the conversations sometimes with students, you know, and they're always trying to build them up. But sometimes they have to use a little tough love, right? You know, and they're not afraid to use that tough love either. But it helps the student to matriculate on and eventually graduate. And I know it's successful efforts when I look at the data. The data shows, you know, that they're doing an excellent job. And I want them to know and you to know that I appreciate them very, very much. So all the community members who are here, who may just have heard of this program and want to chime in, thank you. And we'll be looking forward to your your support moving forward. So thank you so much. We're going to end. And again, we appreciate all of you. I see your very nice comments coming across in the chat. We appreciate that. You know, I'm always impressed with our young brother, Mr. Slappy. He fits in everywhere he goes. You know, that's his MO, you know, and I know he's going to do great things here. So don't forget us when those dollar bills start rolling in, okay? All right, so we're going to let you go. We appreciate everything. God bless you. Please stay safe, and we'll see you the next time. Have a great day. Thank you all.
All right.